Good morning, YouTube family. I hope you're great. Oh my gosh, this really bothers me. I'm gonna take those off. My husband put those up to put a little, what do you call it? Thermos, like a little cooler there, because the theme of our patio, I should give you a little look around before we get talking about what we're talking about today. The theme of our patio is like ocean, because we live in the Palm Beaches. So he decorated this patio, and I support it. I'm good with it. Oh look, we got a little beach house, little thing up there. It's cute. So anyway, the purpose of this video, the reason I'm going live is because I want to talk about cheating on your Bright Line Eating program. And the reason this is important for me to talk about it is because last night I cheated on it. Oh great, I got a live viewer. So you're gonna hear me confess my sins live, but also I'm gonna teach you how to approach it and how to think about it, because at this point I would consider myself an expert in Bright Line Eating. I've read the book 3 times. I'm clearly a success story. I'm down 57 pounds from my highest weight ever. The majority of my weight I've lost on Bright Line Eating. So I have been a member of the Bright Line Eating official Facebook page for quite some time. I have watched a ton of the YouTube videos from Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson. She is the founder of the Bright Line Eating program, and I would highly recommend watching her YouTube videos because she shares her wealth of knowledge so freely. And I just am full of admiration for that woman. So the reason I wanted to do this video today is because last night on my Bright Line Eating program, I cheated. What happened was, I won't get into the long story, but I ate 2 bowls of rice, which is a trigger food for me because I'm half Asian. My mom is from the Philippines. My dad's a redhead from Arkansas, so I'm mixed. But I ate 2 bowls of rice. My neighbor across the street, she's part Chinese and part Jamaican. She made her curry chicken and rice, and I was like, the curry chicken was fine, so I ate that, but I ate her rice. And you can have rice on Bright Line Eating, but it's your grain. And I had already eaten my grain at breakfast, which is, the Bright Line Eating program, and I should not have eaten that rice on my Bright Line Eating program last night, and I ate 2 bowls. I put butter on it and everything. So on Bright Line Eating, we don't resume. We don't R-E-S-U-M-E. We resume, R-E-Z-O-O-M, where you zoom back in, because the traditional diet mentality is when you resume, R-E-S-U-M-E, you are getting back on track. But on Bright Line Eating, what they teach you is that you learn something with every day. You learn something about yourself and your own journey with every step that you take. And so what I learned yesterday is that I should have eaten my dinner before I had a birthday party for my husband. That's what happened. I had a birthday party for my husband with my neighbors. It was outdoors, safe social distancing, like it was just in the front yard. I only allowed neighbors to keep the crowd control, because we're still in the pandemic world. As I go live doing this, we're still in a pandemic. So I intentionally did not invite any friends other than my neighbors, and we kept it outdoors. We spaced out the chairs, but I'm telling you, I should have eaten my dinner before people started coming over, because Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson says if she goes to a wedding or an event or whatever, she eats beforehand, or she'll just not eat and bring her food and eat it later. And so I was waiting to eat corn that was on the grill, because I was like, the corn will be my vegetable, and then I'll eat this Jamaican chicken. So, something else to talk about. I totally didn't even think to talk about this with y'all. I didn't even think to tell it to my weight loss mentor. I allowed myself a cheat of wine. Let's talk about that in a minute. First, we're going to talk about the rice, because the rice to me was like the true cheat, where I was like, that's not on your program. So I fell victim of what we call post-event collapse syndrome, which is where you keep saying no, you keep saying no, you keep saying no, then all of a sudden you fall victim to what is the what the hell mentality. That's what happened to me, because I resisted the rice for 2 hours, and I kept looking at it and being like, nope. And then I finally just was like, what the heck? And I think I got tired. I think that, maybe it was a combination of I'd had a glass of wine, which you're not supposed to drink alcohol on Bright Line Eating. I'm gonna talk about that in a couple minutes, but I will tell you that I fell a victim to post-event collapse syndrome, which has happened to me before. In my previous YouTube videos, check out my playlist. All my Bright Line Eating videos are in the description box below. In a previous video, I talk about what happened to me in November, which is where I fell off the program for 3 weeks, and it might be even 4 weeks, I can't remember exactly, but it was a lot of binge eating. I had started Bright Line Eating September 8th, Labor Day 2020, and I was perfect, what we call a crystal vaser, which is where you don't deviate at all. Up until right before Thanksgiving, I had post-event collapse syndrome. I won't talk about it now, but the short explanation is that I had 9 days of travel where I stayed bright for 9 days, and then after I got home and got settled back in, I had a date night with my husband, went to a Mexican restaurant, and I said yes to tortilla chips. At first I said no, and then the second time they brought it out, I started eating it, and it triggered me to binge eat for 3 or 4 weeks. So ever since then, I resumed after that because I learned that number one, I shouldn't go eat at a Mexican restaurant. That was number one. I was like, okay, can't do that. Number two, I learned that after travels, my willpower is low. So I need to not, I don't know, I need to not do what I did. So, sorry, airplane overhead. What I learned from that is I need to be really strict with my lines. So months go by, and I'm doing great. Like since then, I've been doing great. No binges, you know. I'm gonna talk about the wine now. 2 or 3 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago now, I went out to dinner with a couple of friends, and I had forgotten to eat my fruit. Sometimes when I get busy, I forget to eat my fruit at lunch, and oftentimes I'll just put it in my dinner, or I'll eat it as a snack. You're not supposed to snack on Bright Light Eating, but I'm like, you know, I'll just eat it as a snack. It doesn't affect me. But that day, I'd forgotten to eat my fruit. And even though even if I had not forgotten to eat my fruit, I still would have allowed myself wine. I wanted to experiment because I'm one of those people that coffee and alcohol is not a trigger for me. It doesn't make me want to binge. I don't think it affects me. So, because I've experimented with taking the coffee away and I was fine. You know, I've always been one of those people, if you try to take the ice cream away from me, I'm gonna be upset. But if I'm in the middle of a sip of wine and you're like, I'm gonna take it from you and you can never have it again, I'd be like, okay. Like wine is literally, like alcohol is nothing to me. And I've always known that about myself. I actually feel very fortunate that I don't have any addictive behaviors about alcohol because I have an addictable personality. So you would think that I would be like an alcoholic, but I'm not. So I allowed myself a glass of wine at that dinner and I only drank like half of it. I think I probably only had like 2 or 3 ounces and I was completely fine. I literally left half of the glass sitting there. Yesterday, I purposely skipped my fruit at lunch. We have 6 ounces of fruit at lunch. I skipped it and I allowed myself, like I even measured it out in a special wine glass that has like the measuring things. I measured out 6 ounces of wine. I did drink all 6 ounces. Now, let me say, looking back now, maybe that lessened my willpower because they do say alcohol lessens your inhibitions. So maybe that was part of it. Maybe that's what set me up for the mini binge of rice. Who's to say? Shouldn't have done it. And so I honestly, if I think about it, I don't think it was the wine. I think it was the fact that I had been resisting it for 2 hours. I think it's because I kept looking at it and looking at it. And another thing too for me, I think it's that I resisted all the other food, and in particular, the bundt cake and the little buntinis. I got nothing but cake for my husband. And I kept looking at it and it's not my food. Like I was like, that's poison to me. That's not my food. Those are mantras that we say on Bright Lane Eating is you just don't eat it. No matter what, don't eat no matter what. That's one of the mantras. And so I was, you know, but I was resisting it. And the rice and the chicken were out on the table and I was like, oh man. And I hadn't eaten my planned and prepared food. I had prepared 10 ounces of roasted spaghetti squash with 2.5 ounces of cheese because 2 ounces of cheese is a protein, a half ounce of cheese is a fat. So I was like, that is my dinner. That's it. And I was gonna allow myself the 6 ounces of wine. I should have eaten that. I'm telling y'all, if I had eaten that ahead of time, I would have been okay. But because I was like, oh, I'll eat the jerk chicken that she made, and I was waiting on roasted corn to come out, I was kind of not hungry, but I was like ready to eat. I was probably a little bit hungry. I was ready to eat. You know, it was late, by the way. It was late. By the time I ate, it was late. So I think that I set myself up for failure. But what I want to say is at the end of this is that I am not ashamed. I learned a lesson, and that is how we are on Bright Line Eating. Do not go isolate. In fact, I confessed my sin to my mentor on Bright Line Eating. I'm going to confess my sin to my mastermind group and tell them, you know, I learned a lesson. I ate rice. I ate 2 bowls of rice with butter, and that's a binge behavior for me. I totally felt bingey as I was eating that rice. I was like shoveling it in. You know, my binge brain is always there. Another thing you need to know on Bright Lane Eating is that it teaches you about your brain and that the neural pathways for your eating behaviors, your undesirable eating behaviors, neural pathways are always there. They're like dry riverbeds. They shrivel up and grow smaller with disuse, but they're always there. one trigger away. And so my binge behavior got triggered, and I fell into that behavior, and thank God that my lines, I have shored up this far, and I've been doing it this long that it is no problem for me to get right back on track today. I feel like completely fine. I feel like I resumed because I learned a lesson. Honestly, I should have been more mentally prepared. I let myself get caught up with a lot of things to do yesterday. I was cleaning the house. I was, I didn't prepare for the party. Like, I didn't shower until 30 minutes before the party, so I didn't allow myself time to sit down and eat my Bright Light eating dinner. Like, so many things, it was a domino effect. But on Brightline, we resume, we learn things every step of the way. So when you get back on track, they teach you that you're always 2 feet, like when you're on your Brightline path, you are always 2 feet away from the ditch. But when you're in the ditch, you're always just 2 feet away from getting back on track. And everything you learn, every perceived failure, your failure teaches you a lesson. And so it gives you knowledge that you need. When I got off plan in November, I learned I have post-event collapse syndrome, that my willpower is so strong, but it gets depleted, with travel. I learned that tortilla chips are a trigger for me. I also know that rice is a trigger for me because I'm half Asian. My mom is Filipino. So I am triggered by rice. Rice represents to me love and happy feelings and fullness, and I need to be careful with rice. One time I learned last year, I experimented with rice as my grain for breakfast, because you can have rice on Bright Light Eating as your grain. I experimented with 1 egg, 1 ounce of cheese, because both of those are half a protein, and that was my full protein, and rice, and I stir-fried it. It was delicious, cheesy rice. It's in a Bright Light Eating cookbook recipe, and I made that, and I was like, this triggered me because it was too delicious, and I wanted to make more. I wanted to go make another helping of it, and I said, this taught me that I shouldn't eat this for breakfast. I then experimented with it again 3 or 4 months later, and I felt completely fine about it. At that point, my lines were stronger. I had my habits built up. So anyway, I always get on here and ramble, and this is a rambly video, but I felt compelled to tell you about what happened to me, the lesson I learned, and what you can take away from this. Like, just remember that it's good to be a crystal vaser. On Bright Light Eating, being a crystal vaser means like you have no cracks in your perfect crystal vase, and you have never gone off plan. You have never done 1 bite off plan. My Bright Light Eating mentor is a crystal vaser. Those people I have so much respect for. I am not a crystal vaser. I was until I cracked. I think I was a crystal vaser for 2 months, which I was so proud of. Then I cracked, had my binge from right before Thanksgiving to right before Christmas. Then I got back on track and was a crystal vaser again until I had my wine probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then since then I've been a crystal vaser. Last night, cracked, So I'm back on track, want to be a crystal vaser again today. I'm hungry, so I'm gonna go eat my perfect Bright Light Eating breakfast. Sending you guys love, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, by the way, hit that subscribe button. I upload every Saturday at noon, and I do these little surprise pop-up YouTube lives throughout the week. Love y'all, see you in the next one.